let's get the ball rolling. Nick, tell us about your journey to becoming a full-time author.
Okay, I'll give the short version here. I'm the writer who hates writing. Of course, that I say that tongue in cheek, not anymore. But for most of my life, I was not a fan. I didn't want to write anything after high school, doing all the essays I had to do in English class. I said, "That's it, I'm done, no more writing." Well, fast forward, and as things go, I think God, the universe was playing a joke on me. I decided that I wanted to write a book for my dad. My grandfather had passed away, and we all kind of used to trade paperback novels in the thriller genre. And so I thought, hey, how hard can it be? I didn't know anything about it. I had never written fiction before, like ever. And it was, obviously a huge mess. I was so naive. I had no idea what I was doing. I was so naive. I literally stopped in the middle and I asked my wife, I said, do you think anyone's like ever written a book on how to write books? Like I just that was how clueless I was. So inevitably I did find a few books that had been written about how to write fiction. Bought a couple, read through those, and I really yeah, I really uh I just plugged through. I just pushed through to try to get through the what we call the muddy middle now, right? And it turns out the story was good. That first book, it was terribly written. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing, but it was fun. And I couldn't fit all the crazy, cool ideas that I wanted to write into that first book. So it became another book and then another book. And here we are over 10 years later, and I've got 45 of these books that hopefully have gotten better, the writing as we've gone. But I really just fell in love with the whole process of bringing it to life, not just the writing, but the packaging, the book product. I'm a marketing guy, so that was fun for me to come up with a cover design, work with an artist, working with editors. It was all just this really cool little mini business. And I loved that aspect of it. So I kept doing it. And over the years, I started helping other authors with certain assets that, hey, I know how to do covers, or I know somebody who does. But more importantly, I know how to look at covers. I know how to see if they're good, that they need to hit certain things. I understood genre and, demographics and things like that. So it just became this career that is, fiction, but also a lot of nonfiction, helping other authors get to the next level, not necessarily to where I am or where they're eventually going to be, but just to the next level. That's what I love to do now.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, big picture, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience here today, they might have a book published or maybe a couple of books published, and they want to get to a point where being an author full time is within their realm of possibilities. Big picture, what does an author need to reach an income level to be a full time author?
I think the answer is enough. You need to have enough. The key is enough of what, right? It's is it enough money? Usually that's part of the answer. Security and usually involves money, or dreams usually involve spending money on them. But that's not necessarily all that there is to it. What I've learned the hard way is you need to have a certain mental fortitude to do this. It's not really something that it's what Naval Ravikant calls specific knowledge. It can be learned, but it can't really be taught. This idea of specific knowledge, and I think we all have it to an extent. But what I'm talking about is, I'll just give you a very personal example. I have chronic anxiety. Sometimes it's crippling. It's very difficult sometimes to do certain things. And I've had to learn over years of practice, therapy, medication, whatever. I know I'm getting real TMI here, but this is it. This is me. How to deal with that, how to look at the numbers and say, okay, like those are the numbers. I trust them, but I don't need to believe, I don't need to extrapolate and then, go sit in my little cage of emotion about it. I can just move on and do the next task, which is writing the next book or writing the next email or whatever it is. So there's this, if you want to do this, you have to realize that it's not just about, okay, I write X amount of books and I make X amount of money and it's golden. I know that no one really thinks that it's that simple, but I talk to authors all the time about this kind of stuff, and it seems like when I mention, hey, we have to have this mental fortitude, we have to have, the metal for it, right? We have to really know that we can run our own little tiny business, and you don't really know if you can or what it's going to be like until you do. And so I always tell authors like, hey, do it, start, figure it out. It's failing forward basically. It's just reading about it and talking to people about it and doing stuff like this and just hearing perspectives, but doing it. Write the next book, continue learning about marketing, continue practicing advertising, and then go forward until you look back and go, oh my gosh, I'm making some money here. And then you can sort of organize those experiences into like, okay, well, maybe I did this book in this series and that worked really well with the advertising I did. So I'm going to do more of that. So, I think that's a big part of this is just realizing that it's a lot of little pieces, a lot of experience and knowledge you can't really get without doing it. Again, it goes
Yeah,
back to specific knowledge. You can learn it, but it can't really be taught. Which I know it sounds crazy because I run a whole company on how teaching authors. But the truth is, I want to teach authors that it's like, hey, this is a mindset game more than anything else. It doesn't matter what you want to write; it can sell. Will it? I don't know.
anxiety. I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
anything
Yeah,
about that.
I'm sure you know nothing about that.
I
Yeah.
know nothing about anxiety. I only spent 3 years making $0 per year while building Story Origin and getting it to where it is today. So yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, again, like I left my job in July 2017, publicly launched Story Origin in April 2018. So that's sort of like, 7, 8 months there without really knowing how things are going to go. And then from April 2018 to April 2021, Story Origin was totally free while it was in an open beta, just getting as much feedback from authors as possible, continuing to grow the community, all that stuff. And yeah, I had zero anxiety about all that. Yeah, none,
I mean,
none
I was on a call
whatsoever.
with you. I remember those early days. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you building? That's really cool. Wait a minute, it's free? Oh, what are you doing?" I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel especially good when people say, "Evan, what are you doing?" So yeah, no, I totally understand that anxiety and I ask myself that all the time. So I do completely agree with you. So much of it is about having that fortitude of knowing where you want to be and knowing that it's going to take a long time to get there and that you will make small incremental wins along the way, but it's never going to be an immediate success. When I was starting Story Origin, I thought, I'm going to release this thing. It's free. It does what you would need otherwise, like 5 other services to do all the stuff that Story Origin does, and Story Origin does it all for free. I'd be like, this thing's gonna take off like a rocket ship overnight. And no, it's not that way. But you have this expectation that it's going to. And I think everyone does, and you kind of have to have that expectation that you're going to do well, because if you don't have that expectation going in, then it's hard to you'll never be hyped up enough to get started, right? Um, but it is then sort of maintaining that over time does become one of those things where you have to navigate it. So I love that you talk so much about fortitude. This wasn't really like on my list of questions, but how, what sort of expectations should an author have going into like starting to publish, about like how long it might take, how many books they might write before they start to see things happen, or what does that sort of curve look like? I mean, obviously, uh it'd be nice if you just wrote a book and it takes off overnight, and millions of people read it and it just hits the perfect cultural zeitgeist, right time, right place, all that stuff. But that's not something that you can really depend on. So how does an author build, a reliable and dependable income stream in what is a very unreliable and hard to decipher sort of market?
No, I think it's a great question, and I hate answering in the generic, well, it depends,
Yeah,
advice. So what I can do is say, what happened to me or what happened for me was this. I didn't approach it as a business at first. And I think I would give different advice now. I'd say always, if you know that you want to do this as a living for a living, approach it like a business. But for me, I didn't know that it could be a business. I mean, this is back before the Kindle came out, right? So this was 2000, I guess it was after, but 2012, 2011 was my first book. Um,
early days.
Yeah, early days, right? We didn't really know that there was this stuff out, this possibility. I remember I was querying agents when the first book was done, which is not something that I do. Um, so what happened for me was I wrote this first book and I loved the whole process of it, even though it was my mom and a couple other people that you know that read it only. Um, I kept going because I had more ideas I wanted to get out, and I kind of found my groove there. I sort of figured out this genre that I was in was this action adventure, James Rollins, Indiana Jones meets National Treasure style. I really loved. I thought I liked it, and then I knew that I kind of tested that. I knew that that was it. That was my genre, and so I just kept going. And what I was doing without realizing it was I was practicing. I was honing my craft. I was learning how to write a book, but I was also getting better at the things that I was practicing. And I did do one thing I think was really helpful for my future self back then, and that was every book at the time I had a goal, a very specific singular goal. And the first one was, can I write a book? Can I even get this stupid thing done? The second book, I remember thinking, well, I'm not a woman and I've never been a parent, so can I write a female protagonist who's a mom? As can I do it realistically or whatever? That was my only goal. I don't think it did very well actually at that one, but I did it, right? And that was the point. And then the
Right.
third book, it was, can I have two main characters kind of back and forth, right? And that book is The Enigma Strain. It became the first book in the still running Harvey Bennett series. That would my bestseller. And I've had people ask me about that one. It has something like 8,000 reviews. I mean, it's doing well. The first 12 months of its existence, it made $80 total. Right. So this isn't a fast thing. And I know, again, people know that. You've heard that. You understand that. But still, it's not possible to say exactly which books are going to take off, which ones aren't, how many it's going to take. I just think the answer is write the next one and just keep writing the next one. That has to be the answer. I think for many reasons. Obviously, there's the tongue in cheek, like, well, you always want to make more money. You always want to be more successful. And that means you need to write more books. But it's also true that you can't market something that doesn't exist. So before you even start considering the marketing and the advertising, you got to have a product that people want. And yeah, maybe you did it right the very first time or even the third time. Maybe not though. Maybe you really don't understand truly the market demographics of that genre, the historical fiction, fantasy, whatever it is. So write the next book, continue honing that craft, get better, focus on, okay, hey, I know how to write the book. I feel like I'm ready to be successful now. Great. Use that knowledge and then focus on, what do I think the reader really wants from the next book? That's another challenge you can give yourself. And you write that book and look back and say, okay, well, that one's actually selling pretty well. Maybe I'm on the right track here. And you just keep going. I do like to
Yeah.
say that marketing is conceptually very simple. I know there's a lot to it, right? It's not easy, but conceptually it's very simple. I believe it's just creating something that you already know people want and then showing it to them or giving it to them, right? It really is that simple. This isn't, the shady used car salesman tactics where you smile and your gold silver tooth. You know what I'm talking about? That's like a thing, right? Bling,
Yeah, yeah,
glints.
yeah.
The epitome of the shady sales guy tactics. That's not what marketing is. It's been kind of cannibalized and turned into that. We think, oh, I don't want to market. I don't like sales because of those types of identities we put to it. Marketing is really just saying, hey, I already know there's a market for people who like vampire, werewolf, romance fiction, right? We already know that. And so I know people love that stuff. And I know that I'm a good enough writer to write that stuff. So I just need to create it and then figure out how to show people that people love that. They want to be marketed to, because if you can tell me the next sweet hockey romance book to read that I know that I'll like, that's the perfect spice level for me, then I'm going to buy it because I don't have to worry about what to read next now. So marketing is very conceptually simple. It's just making something you already know people want and then showing it to them. That's it.
Yeah, and it sounds like an important part of going back to the mental fortitude kind of thing. It's less about like, you know, having the gumption to like overcome the struggles and more about trying to find the joy in the thing that you're doing, right? Like you're saying you challenge yourself to write a book from like a female protagonist mother perspective, and that was something that you wanted to create as a challenge to yourself to do. And then it sounded like from a lot of your story there were things like about the marketing aspects or um about getting your book in front of readers that you you find joy in doing, in trying to figure out along the way. And it's not just about, having the self-discipline to do the things that you don't like, but about also finding the joy in the things that you should be doing, and figuring out what makes it fun for you, kind of a deal too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you're also right there in that you do want to study your genre before you just write a book, because if you write a book and, with a ton of different tropes, from a ton of different genres, and you're trying to interweave a lot of things, it might be a really interesting book, but you might be sort of like playing on things that one audience likes, and then using things that another audience likes, and there's not really overlap, and they don't actually like the other thing that the other people like. And so you're kind of crossing wires there in a way that, instead of making it, attractive to both audiences, you are making it unattractive to both audiences.
Right.
So understanding like the tropes of the genre that you're writing in are important. And again, a lot of that also goes back to sort of cultural zeitgeist as well. Like what is about what it just getting that timing of like what is interesting to readers right now, because that changes over time. I read a ton of lit RPG. I'm always talking about it. But used to be everything in lit RPG was like a virtual reality. You get trapped inside the game, and if you die in the video game, you die in real life, sort of thing. And lit RPG has left that years ago, and that like there any new lit RPG book, if you have a VR like MMO setting, people automatically assume in the genre like, oh, was this written like 10 years ago, and sort of just bypass it.
Right.
um
Right.
so it's really important to sort of understand the dynamics in your genre for sure.
Yeah,
uh
and just to say, to add on to that, man, you're exactly right. I think the
yeah,
challenge is understanding that this isn't a paint by number. Like we're not saying, you need to write with this very granular blueprint so that everything is the same. I think that's the fear we have as authors when we hear that right to market advice. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to write the book that I've already read, that everyone else has written. I want to write what I want to write. And I think the key is, no, you are writing what you want to write. You just recognize that there's these, tent pole tropes that are really, really important to hit. It's more like, instead of a paint by number, it's more like a framework of painting saying, I need you to paint me a picture. You're a good painter, right? But I need you to paint me a picture it's got a lighthouse in it, and it's got some seagulls, and it's on the coastline, and it's got a thundery lightning sky. If I give that framework to five different painters, I'm going to get five very different paintings, right? There's a whole lot of creative input that every single one of those people is going to put in, and even if they tried to make them look exactly the same, they wouldn't, because they're different painters. That's what this is. When you see a trope in a genre, happily ever after, or in thrillers, you want to find out, you want to know who the bad guy is uh, up front, rather than in a mystery where you find out at the end. Just as an example, right? And obviously, there's
right.
twists and things like that. No, it's not the bad guy we thought it was. That doesn't matter. I'm saying, generally speaking, these are the big tropes in the genre. You got to know those, and you got to try to acknowledge them. Just to say, hey, I know that this is the trope. I know, but I'm going to subvert it for you. Readers love to have their expectations subverted, but if you just ignore that that's a trope, and if you don't do that, if the end of your romance ends without a happily ever after, they're going to be mad, and they don't even know why. And that's the challenge. We start getting one-star reviews from readers who don't even know why, because they're not writers. They don't understand why they didn't like your book, because it read great all the way to the end. Oh my gosh, I just didn't feel right. Romance is a little different because the readers do know the tropes, and they'll tell you, they'll call you out on that. Ask me how I know. I just published a sweet hockey romance. But yeah, in thriller world, most people are reading one, two, three books a year. They're not whale readers, and they're just gonna they don't really know what it was about your book that they didn't like. They just didn't
Right.
like it. And the answer is, it's tropes. It's a lot of times you just didn't get something in there. There's no midpoint twist. There's no big climactic set of scenes. All these red herrings didn't kind of get tied up well enough, or whatever it is. So it's not a paint by number. It's not saying you have to, chapter one, you have to do this, chapter two, you have to do this, chapter three. It's really more like just saying, hey, paint me a painting about a lighthouse, but it has to have a lighthouse in it. It has to be a recognizable lighthouse. That's really it.
So along those lines of knowing what to write and doing the writing, what are some tools and resources that you recommend to authors use in their writing?
Well, I think I can give you my stack. I am 100% dictating these days for my fiction. That there's a whole story there, but the point is, I don't do any of my fiction writing on a computer because there's too much other stuff going on. I see mistakes, I see errors. It's there's emails. I know I can turn off notifications and all that, but come on. TikTok, I got to know what's happening. So I'm in, I dictate, and that means I'm usually in the car, driving around because I just like to drive in Colorado, so it's real pretty to drive around and see stuff. I might go to a brewery or a coffee shop after I've dictated, and then I dump those words in and have Dragon dictate in the past. Now that I'm on a new Mac, I can't use that anymore, so I use some AI tools to transcribe. There's OpenAI has Whisper, which does really good transcription, and then I run it through ChatGPT to fix homophones, things that I said that it picked up the wrong way. So it's not writing the book for me, right? It's just doing a quick pass edit so I can have a first draft that I understand what's happening. And so I do that in Scrivener. That's my writing tool. It's my main workhorse for writing. And once the book is in there, it's first draft mode. I'll go through, I'll do a real quick kind of second draft line edit. This is all myself, right? And then once I feel like it's at a readable point, I export. I'm done with Scrivener. I export it out of Scrivener into Vellum, which is a publishing tool, which actually is a really nice writing environment as well. I don't want to write a whole book in it, but it's nice to have a whole book there, and then I can kind of work on. And so I open Vellum, I open the book in Vellum. It's a Word file. It imports in really nicely. And I'll usually, the first thing I'll do is export that second draft and then just read it, like put it on my Kindle and read it. I like to take baths, so I might sit in the bathtub and read my book. Kindle's nice because I can highlight and make edits and stuff. And if I drop it in the water, it's waterproof. So hey, there's a little tip for you.
There you go.
Glass of wine, whatever. But that's how I do my first kind of real edit. I just read through. Does it read well? Is there anything missing? Obviously, typos I'm going to fix or I'm going to highlight. All of that gets dumped back, and then in Vellum, I'm still doing all my editing there. I take the notes I've made, I fix things up, and then I run Grammarly right inside Vellum, and then that's another editing kind of AI based editing tool that fixes some things. And so, yeah, I do everything in Vellum at that point. And once I have that kind of done, it's about as good as I can personally get it. It's ready for other eyes. Now, most of the time, I don't pay like a substantive editor. I don't do developmental edits and things like that with one specific person. Instead, I have a reading, like an ARC list, basically a beta reader team that I'll send it out to. So like 200 people, they're like the ex-librarians, the editors that in the previous life, and they just like my books and they want to help. And so I'll send it to them for free, ask them to read it, review it, all that stuff, and then I get back some early reviews and fixes and things like that as well. Um, so at that point, I mean, the book is probably 97 to 98% perfect. I'm a firm believer that nothing ever is perfect. So that's about as good as it's ever going to get. However, the truth is, the best way to find a typo is to publish the book. So I then published the book at 98% perfect and inevitably find a couple little typos here and there that people send back to me. I fix those up. This is iterative, guys, right? Like this is the lean startup methodology, right? Like we can iterate these things. It's not like a publishing house where you write it and then you got to wait 18 months before that run is done and or whatever. We can upload the book and have it within a day, like less than a day, hours sometimes. And so yeah, I at that point I will just iterate the book. This is all ebook first. So I released the ebook, and the first week or two, I'm getting some early reviews. I'm fixing things up, re-uploading the manuscript every time. And after kind of the dust settles for that launch is when I start looking at if I'm going to do an audiobook, paperback, any other formats. Because I don't want to do a paperback and then have to iterate it's just annoying that way. So
Right.
it's much easier and faster to do this all in ebook form. But that's my tools. That's my tool stack. So hopefully that's helpful. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, if there's any questions specific about any of those, but I think most of us have probably heard of some of those tools. But that's the writing tools, that kind of the first side.
Very lean method, lean startup sort of methodology, get feedback and then iterate. Your next book, you'll take some of that feedback and the next book will be different, better, all that kind of stuff. And that is sort of the best way to get feedback is by actually going to market. One thing that I've seen that's interesting is so Story Origin has a feature for beta readers as well. And one author that I know, they actually write their book and they publish each chapter uh to their beta copy on Story Origin. And the way the beta copies feature works on Story Origin is readers have to leave feedback on each chapter to unlock the next chapter. So you can kind of think about it like Patreon or something where it's like serialized fiction, but they have to leave feedback to unlock that next chapter instead of paying, a monthly subscription or something like that. And so that author, they are publishing each chapter, getting the feedback on it, revising it, and then publishing the next chapter, revising it. And so they don't even have a process where, they've written the book, they send it out to readers, they get the feedback, they make the changes, and then they publish it. They are essentially editing it as they are writing it. And so by the time that they've finished writing the book, it's already gone through revisions from the feedback that the beta readers have given. So as soon as they're done writing that book, they're basically ready to publish. So there's no even wait time between then and publication, which is I found really interesting. And it's just like sort of that lean methodology. It's very
It is,
interesting to see
yeah.
what some authors are doing there.
And there's other
Um,
platforms out there doing similar stuff. Like Royal Road is kind of that people have Lit RPG is big over there too. And that's another one that's doing
absolutely.
something similar, right?
Absolutely. We actually had a question about Royal Road. Someone said, I don't know if you have expertise in it, but could you speak about publishing on Road for reader engagement first, and then converting to Amazon eventually?
I actually can't. I don't know that I've ever even been to the website. I don't write lit RPG, and that I know
Yeah.
that you can do any genre there, right? But I don't even read lit
Yeah.
RPG through Royal Road. So yeah, I'm not the person to ask for that stuff. Maybe I don't know.
I
Maybe you
I
can.
am someone who has read on Royal Road. It's not something I do super frequently. But I like to talk to a lot of lit RPG authors as well. And it's very interesting because it's different from a lot of other sort of other genres where nothing like this has really popped up, but at least in this genre, in lit RPG, what you do is like you publish serially via Royal Road. If you're in another genre, there are other platforms where you can publish serially, but it's not exactly the same setup. Those are usually like paid platforms. Everything on Royal Road is completely free to read. So authors will build up their audience there. And then usually they will do like they'll write like 3 or 4 chapters ahead of Royal Road, and those will only be available via like Patreon or something like that. And so readers have to subscribe if they want to read ahead. And then they will after they've finished sort of book one arc, they will take that down off of Royal Road and put that up on Amazon, usually into Kindle Unlimited. But we also had a question about Kindle Unlimited versus Wide, and I think this would be a good chance to discuss that.
Yeah,
What are your
definitely.
thoughts on KU versus Wide?
Man, you guys are going to quote me as the guy who just says, "Well, it depends."
So much of it
No, no,
does,
no. I'll
though.
tell you
It's
again.
a
I'll,
it's a
I'll
fair answer most of the time.
Well, here's what I'll say. Like when I teach and coach, and obviously do a lot of speaking and conferences and things like that. And rather than say it depends, what I like to say is I'll tell you what I did, and I want it to be descriptive, not prescriptive. So I'm gonna tell you what I do, and don't hear me say you have to do the same thing. I know again, you know that, but just take everything with a grain of salt. My advice is to figure out what you need from the book that you're about to publish. What I mean by that is Kindle Unlimited. I'm going to be very, very general here. I know thrillers. I barely know the sweet hockey clean romance genre. I don't even know that at this point. But I know thrillers, and in thrillers, Kindle Unlimited is a good thing for us. It typically will make us more money faster. Typically. Now, there's exceptions. The exceptions are if you started wide as a thriller author and you've never been in Kindle Unlimited, or you only have a few books in Kindle Unlimited compared to a big wide catalog that you've been building up over time, you probably are making more money wide. So it might make sense to go wide with that new book or new series, whatever it is. But if you're just getting started, you've got one thriller that you want to release, it is simpler. Just sheerly a fact. Like it's just simpler to go with one place, to go to one place, and that happens to be Kindle Unlimited for me, um, because it's a gigantic company and started as a bookseller, right? It's just it's the biggest bookstore out there. The alternative, if you still want to go to one place, I recommend Draft to Digital, of course, right? It's an aggregator that you put your book up there. It's totally free. They take a small percentage, 10 to 15%, if you make money on that book, but then they send it out to 200 something stores, or I don't even know the number, but it's a lot of stores. So you can go wide that way. And that's typically how most people go wide. They don't often want to bother with tax interviews in different countries and all that for every single store that may only give them 17 cents a year, you know? Um, so it's not hard to go wide, but when we're talking about building a career, building some financial stability on this, um, it's easier to go to one place. And if you choose one store, I think it should be Amazon because you have the ability to benefit from their millions of customers who are already warm leads, meaning they want to buy books, they want to see your stuff. And most importantly, you only have to focus on marketing and advertising to that one place. Whereas even if you go with Draft to Digital, yeah, it's one place to release your book, right? But then if you want to advertise, you have to like go advertise to that store in that country or point readers to that somehow. And so it's just not as easy. It's certainly not as cheap. So all that to say, I like Kindle Unlimited. I've always been a big fan of Kindle Unlimited. Yeah, Amazon. We all hate Amazon for different reasons, but you know, they do offer something that no other place offers, which is having the most customers in one place, ready to buy books. And so if you can put a shingle out in only one place, I would recommend Kindle Unlimited for that.
I
So
I
that to say, I do have a translated series, books that I've translated, either with human translations, AI translations I'm testing. All of that stuff, I usually go wide because I don't know where people are going to buy those books. I don't know the German market. I don't know the French market. And so I want to go wide and cast the net wide, right? And just figure out, hey, are people in Germany buying from Amazon or is there somewhere else I don't know about? Um, so anyway, yeah, it just depends on your book and your goals. But typically, if you want to keep things as simple as possible and try to make money as soon as possible, probably Kindle Unlimited.
I think that makes sense, and I think something a little bit that you said at the beginning there is if you're just starting out, which I think is in versus if you have books that you've already published wide and you've already built up a wide audience, then it would make sense to go wide again. I think that does play into whether or not to go wide, just the having a backlist part, right? Because
Yeah.
when you're in Kindle Unlimited, if you've only published a single book, readers, they don't have to risk anything to take a chance on picking up your book and reading it, right? They're not spending money and then going to have to get a refund if they don't like the book or something along those lines. Versus when you're going wide, readers have to make a purchase decision, right? With Kindle Unlimited, they're not making a purchase decision. They are just seeing what's out there and they're reading whatever they want in the catalog. And if they don't like something, they can put it down at no cost to them and pick up something else. So, especially for authors that are just starting out and only have, one or two books published, it makes it a lot more accessible to those readers at the very least. And I think that one other thing that I wanted to talk about with the new versus like a new author versus an author with a backlist. What are the various marketing channels that because they are different? What is going to be valuable to an author with just a single book is going to be different from an author with multiple books or a huge backlist. What are the various marketing channels that you would recommend for an author that's just starting out?
No, that's a great question. I think it comes down to approach. I'll talk about channels in a second, but I think it comes down to the mindset again. Surprise, surprise. When you're just starting out, you're not, well, I don't believe you should be trying to make money. I think you're fighting obscurity at this point. I don't like to think of authors as competition, but from a product business marketplace standpoint, there's a lot of competition. There are a ton of books out there. And just because, you read my book doesn't mean you're not going to read Evan's book. Like that's why they're not really competition. And frankly, they can actually help each other. We do newsletter swaps, things like that. But the truth is, my reader can only read my book while they're reading they can't read any other book while they're reading mine. And so I want them to read mine first rather than Evan's, right? And so I mean, I'm talking around it. What I'm saying is, at first, we're fighting obscurity. We're just trying to be seen. We're just trying to get some readers in there. So early on, from book one to book three, the Enigma Strain, the one I talked about, I only had three pieces of fiction I'd ever written. There were no short stories, there were no chapters, there was nothing. It was just three full-length thrillers that I was trying to sell on Amazon, and I gave them away at the same time. It's against Amazon's terms of service, but I don't care. I gave them away on my website. I said, hey, they're for sale. They're in Kindle Unlimited, but they're all, I didn't tell Amazon this, obviously. But then if you went to my website, you would get offered all three of my thrillers if you gave me your email address. Now, that's not uncommon these days, but back then, this is 2012. There weren't a whole lot of people building mailing lists comparatively. And there certainly weren't a lot of people giving away a full book, much less three full-length thrillers. But the idea was, I want to give these people a freebie that is just a no-brainer. Like it's an offer they can't refuse. I'm fighting obscurity. I'm trying to get people to know my name. I don't want their money yet. That'll come later, right? That was my mindset. And I don't know when. I could probably pinpoint it for my own career, but in every single one of our careers, that needs to shift, right? Obviously, I mean, we want to start making money, so we have to start doing things that make us money, like not just giving away all our books for free. And so at some point, I made that shift where I said, okay, I've got, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 books out in one genre. So I'd also had a couple books in like science fiction. Wasn't doing well, but in one specific genre, people that I have a product I know people want, and I'm going to show it to them. That was marketing. I had all these books in one genre, and I said, okay, it's time to start figuring out what marketing channels I need to use to get more eyeballs onto this stuff. And that's the first time, and really wasn't before that, but the first time I started looking at paid advertising. So the good news is if you are fewer than maybe 5 or 6, maybe it's 10, maybe it's a bigger number these days. If you're fewer than that into your author career, maybe you don't look at paid advertising yet. Maybe that's not something I mean, I'm not saying you can't, and it certainly can work, but it's another full-time job you're adding, right? So maybe you just focus on getting to that number, but fight the obscurity first. Give everything away. Just get people on your mailing list. Get them to know who you are. Get them to recognize your name. And then when you do advertising, you start pouring fuel on that fire, right? So people know who you are. Oh, yeah, I remember that author. He gave me all these cool free books. I liked him. He's got a new book out that's $5. I'm going to grab it. Or it's in Kindle Unlimited. I'm going to get it. That's how advertising works, right? Um, yes, you can, start with a cold audience who's never heard of you before, and you can convert them. That's totally possible, but it costs more money and it takes longer to get that, engine running. So that's the way I do it. I think the mindset is if you're starting out, you're fighting obscurity, at some point you kind of flip the switch and say, okay, I can still have a freebie offer. I still offer books on my website for free because I want people to sign up, but I'm absolutely investing heavily in advertising and marketing. So, sorry, to answer your question in a very long way, marketing channels that work really well for me are Facebook and Amazon. Those are advertising channels specifically. I'm not talking social media. For Facebook, I do Facebook ads, dynamic creative tests, things like that. For Amazon, I do a little bit of negative advertising, some auto ads, but the majority of it is a sponsored product ads with just products in it that I've decided are a good fit for my readership. And I let those run. Amazon is a little bit harder. It's a little more finicky to, they don't want to spend your money, it seems like sometimes. Whereas Facebook, they'll spend every dime that you put in every single day. And so you got to be real careful with Facebook generally because you will spend money. You just need to make sure it's going to be money on the right people. But they also have hands down the best platform. So I've also tested, Twitter, BookBub ads, Google, PPC ads, and TikTok, Pinterest, everything. And by far, Facebook is the one that gives us the most control, at the same time giving us, I guess it's like the least control in some ways, because they do a lot of AI based, generalizing of the population to find individual readers that you couldn't do with your own targeting. So meaning I can control that I only want, people 25 and up to find my books. But I also know that Facebook knows more about all these people than I do because they're super creepy. So I'm just going to let Facebook do that job, right? And they do. They find people that have these eclectic interests that combine to being a Nick Thacker reader. And I would never be able to target those things or even uncover those things on my own. So I love Facebook for that as a platform, as an ad platform. Amazon is much more like, hey, this book is like mine, advertise to it, and then have it show up on that book page somewhere. So it can take a little longer because you're relying on Amazon to put eyeballs onto that page. So if you find a book that's just like yours, but it's ranked, 2 million in the Amazon store, no one's ever going to see it, which means they're never going to see your ad. So it's a little
Right.
little bit different there, right? But those are the two big platforms I use. I didn't mention this because it's not an advertising platform, but marketing channel, email, that's a big one for me. Here's the deal. I'll just kind of give away the farm here. I believe marketing for authors is three buckets. It's email marketing, it's social media, and it's advertising. And it's usually in that order, but not necessarily. I mean, I'm doing all of those things at the same time now, but if you're just getting started, email is basically free. Especially if you use author email, which I built, it's $10 a month for, an email list, up to like 10,000 subscribers. So it's a great platform for that. It's not as pretty as, some of the other stuff, but you're not going to pay $300 a month for 10,000 people. So it's a good platform. Anyway, the point is email marketing. You're going to be talking to your readers. You're going to be telling them who you are, what you're doing, and certainly new books coming out, all that stuff. Social media I mentioned because whether we like it or not, everyone, our readers are on social media somewhere. Now, I don't mean you have to start a TikTok account and start making videos of you dancing in the streets of New York City. You can, it probably would work. I hate that, but it probably would work. But I'm not saying that you have to be on all the social media platforms. I'm just saying you need to figure out where your readers hang out and have a presence there. A lot of this can be automated. I've mentioned a couple AI tools. I have no fear of using Chat GPT. I train a custom GPT with tweets or Facebook posts that I've already made, my thoughts, and I tell it, hey, please limit it to my thoughts. Like I don't want you to like make up some random stuff. Like, but what would I say in this instance, and have it spit me out 50 tweets? And I'm not going to go copy paste those to Twitter, right, guys? But I'm just going to use those as a jumping off point to say, hey, I don't want to be on Twitter, but my readership is there. And I say I usually use Twitter for my nonfiction stuff. So I'm usually marketing more toward authors who are trying to write books rather than readers on Twitter. Facebook, I'll do fiction advertising and fiction social media. But I use the same approach, right? So I'll say, hey, write some Facebook posts that I can use in this holiday season, just talking about cool facts and history or whatever, because that's a component of my books, and it'll give me ideas. It doesn't give me final drafts, but it gives me ideas. It's a great tool to automate something that we're already supposed to be doing, I believe, which is creating content, like creating something so that when people find you, they know they're in the right place. So that's again a core tenet of what I believe social media should be. You are not trying to attract people; you are trying to be attractive to people. The difference is subtle, but it's very important. So if I get on Twitter and say I'm just going to attract people to my profile, well, that just means I'm hanging out on Twitter all day, commenting on posts and saying, "Hey, will you like this? Will you reply to that? All that." I don't want to do that. That's a waste of my time. I don't think that's a valuable use of anyone's time, really. What I'd rather do is be attractive. So when you get to my profile, when you get to my Facebook reader profile, you know you're in the right place. You know you're one of my readers. Oh, this guy likes the Colorado Avalanche. I like hockey. That's fun. Oh, he writes about history. I love history. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm going to like him. I'm going to follow him. That's what we're trying to do with social media, right? It's not, sending stuff out into the void and hoping that something, gets clicked on and our book gets bought. Like it's building a relationship. And yeah, you can automate pieces of it, and yeah, you can generate content that is brainless and mindless from AI, and then tweak it and use it. But the goal is to just speed up the initial relationship building process, so that they know they're in the right place when they find it, and then they start following you, and then you build a long-term relationship of you as the real person behind it. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to cover a lot of bases there, but that's kind of yeah, my three buckets. That's marketing,
Yeah.
and then some specific advertising channels within that.
Yeah, I mean, so that's great because you answered a few of my questions in there that I also had planned to ask you around, from starting out to as you get more books published, what are the various marketing channels that become more valuable too? Sounds like you would start with email for, someone who's under 3 books, 4 books, 5 books. Focus on giving those books away or giving stuff away, building name recognition, building an audience, get them on your email list, start to build a rapport with that audience. And then once you've got a larger backlist, then that's when become the paid advertising stuff starts to make more sense because,
Yeah.
one thing we didn't talk about there, but like if you're giving everything away for free and you're running paid ads to it, then you're losing money and you're not ever making money.
Right,
And
right.
even
Yeah.
with a big backlist, once you have that big backlist, you might still give away book one for free and run ads to that, free book on Amazon. But you can do that because X percentage of people that read book one are going to go on to buy book 2 or 3 or 4, etc. And I'm going to make this amount of money off of that percentage of people. And so even if I lose a little bit of money sending people to read the free book one, I'm going to make it up for it with the sales that come from book two, book three, four, etc.
Precisely, man. Yeah, that's well said. It's calculating your read through. When it gets to advertising, I haven't said this yet, but I don't think it's really worth spending the money on advertising, even just two books. Certainly not one, unless like I said, if you're advertising book one of a series, there better be, I say at least three books before you really start investing in that. And the reason is just what you said. The margins are too low. We're not selling cars where we make, $4,000 when someone buys one. We're making $3, maybe $2, maybe less. And so that severely limits the amount of money we're able to invest to be able to turn a profit, right? This is just business economics 101, right? It's just money in, money out. You got to figure out that margin. You got to figure out your return on investment. And the way we do that with books is to calculate your read through. It's not a perfect science, but you can get a spreadsheet, figure out how many people read your book. If you're in Kindle Unlimited, you get the KENP numbers, the number of pages that have been read over X amount of time. And you divide it all together and with special wizardry math that I don't understand. That's why I use Excel. And it tells you a number. It says, this is how much money you make when one reader goes from book one to book 15. Right. And for me, that number, last I checked, it was like 6 months ago. It's probably time to update it. Last I checked, that's like $80 if I have a reader go from book one to book 15. So that's a lot more money now that I can play with to advertise to get one reader. One reader, and I don't want to say this to make it sound like I think people are only, worth $80, but a reader in business sense to me is worth $80 for this series. You can even add more value if you get them on your list, right? Well, now there's a lifetime value of the customer number that we can figure out. And I won't get into the weeds here, but like that's just one series. That's 15 book Harvey Bennett thrillers series. I'm talking 16 books now that I'm talking about. But at some point along that journey from book one to book 16, I'm hoping that I'll get them on my mailing list if they're not already there, because once they're on my mailing list, I can send them deals for other books, box sets or paperback books and audiobooks. And it's a kind of a complicated number to figure out, but then the lifetime value of that customer is so much higher. It might be close to $500 now, which means that every dollar I spend to get them on my, let me put it a different way. If I spend $499 to get them to buy the book one, I'm going to make $1. I'm going to make $500, right? I'll be $1 in the black. Now that's not a great margin. It costs far less than that to get them to read book one,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's the numbers you're dealing with when you have a long running series and a big backlist.
Right.
And it's also the reason I don't recommend doing any of this until you've got at least a small backlist of like 3, 4, 5 books. Because if you're trying to sell people on book one, yeah, you'll get people to click it and yeah, you'll get people to buy it, but you might have to spend $10 to get one person to buy the book. And there's probably no universe where you're going to make money unless, you price your book at $12.99, they're not going to buy it in the first place. So, whatever your book price is, $4.99, $5.99, mine are $6.99 a lot of times, you're still losing money to get that customer because it's only one book. There's nothing else for them to read.
Right.
That's yours. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's more of a businessy kind of answer, but the lifetime value of the customer, return on investment, margins, you got to have more books before any of that stuff starts really turning in your favor.
Right. I mean, having those just guideposts for authors about, hey, look, don't even worry about this until you get to this stage is so valuable for so many authors, because a lot of authors, when they're just starting out, think, oh, well, I see, so and so who has, I see Nick Thacker, he's got 40 books. This is what he's doing right now at this
Mhm.
stage in his career. I'm going to copy what he's doing. It won't work for you because you don't have 40 books out, right?
Right.
It's and you've built an audience over so much time with your email list and all that stuff and giving your stuff away for free for so long and building that name recognition and stuff like that. So they have to go back to the Nick Thacker of a decade ago and say,
Yeah,
what
well,
was
and it's
he doing,
relationships. I've
Right.
built very specific relationships that are not yours, and
Right.
so if you try to go, you sold all your books for $2.99, you see what I'm doing, you're like, oh, I'm going to do my next book at $6.99. Your readers might be mad because that's not what you've been doing, right? I've been building up this relationship base with all these users, all these readers for over a decade, and you
Yeah.
have as well, and that's the key, right? You can look at what I'm doing. And again, hopefully it's more descriptive than prescriptive, right? Don't just copy
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Not because I don't want you to copy me, that'd be flattering, but because it's not going to work. You got to
Right.
learn from it, but not by applying exactly what I'm doing. So way
Right.
to just what I said with pricing, the way to look at that is what are other people in my genre pricing at? Am I low? Okay, well then rather than going straight from 2.99 to 6.99, let me go to 3.99 with my next book. And then maybe I'll write an email to my readers and explaining why, or maybe even my email readers get it for 2.99 and then I raise it to 3.99 for the other poor schmucks on Amazon who haven't heard of me. And
Right.
then the next book you go 4.99. So there's ways to incrementally do that work for you. Don't just go say, okay, well, I know this person's paying, $100 a day on Facebook ads. So I'm going to go spend $100 today and hope that Facebook knows what to do with it, because they won't, but they'll spend it and you'll lose it. It's just a matter of figuring out, okay, well, $100 a day sounds like a lot of money. So I need to figure out how to start spending a lot of money on Facebook. But you can also intuitively understand that they're not spending $100 a day on Facebook ads unless they're making money somewhere else. So that's the research you have to do. Figure out, okay, well, I wonder what they're doing. Maybe I can just ask them. Maybe I can go figure out. Facebook has a Facebook ads library. You can actually go
Yep.
look for that person and see their ads. They go look at their books on Amazon. What are they directing them to? Their website? They're directing the face to Amazon. Whatever it is, you can kind of reverse engineer a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, which is the way we all did it. It's not like there's some secret that we all know. All being people who are full-time authors that write fiction for a living. Like we just figured it out because we had to. When we wrote these books, we knew people would like them. We wanted to find those readers. That's just marketing. So we just tried to figure this stuff out. And as new tools come, make things easier or harder or whatever, we play with them, we mess with them, and we apply those. ChatGPT is a good example. I used to have to write all of the marketing copy for everything, but now I can just have my book that's been, transcribed. The transcription has been edited by ChatGPT in one chat window. I can say, hey, you just basically transcribed this whole thing. Can you give me a blurb? Can you give me a description I can use for Amazon? And it's like, boop, there we go. That's good enough. I mean, I'm gonna obviously tweak it. I'm gonna make it, make sense or shorten it, whatever. But it's a great first draft. I don't have to spend 30 minutes crafting a description, that I can use on Amazon. It's all right there. So that's an example of just using tools that, we're not trying to cheat. We're not trying to have do the work for us, but there's things that we all have to do that aren't our core business, which is writing books and entertaining readers, right? There's stuff that
Right.
we can use tools for, or VAs, outsource people, whatever. I'm getting off on a tangent, so I'll shut up. But that's kind of how I approach this stuff is like, can I use this tool? I'm not trying to replace me, the only I can write Nick Thacker books. That's just the truth. Good or bad, I don't care how people feel about them. I'm the only one who can do that. So no, I'm not going to have AI write that for me, but absolutely I'll have it, do a blurb, do a description, or write a Facebook update that I can then tweak and use and, make my own. It just saves a lot of time.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Um, we are nearly at our hour here. So can we do like a lightning round of questions?
Oh
Because we
yeah,
have been
definitely.
getting so many questions from the
Yeah, let's do it.
audience, and we have been I really want to get to a lot of this stuff on the list. Um, so uh first let's start with what are the best ad targeting strategies for Facebook? Just what's a quick answer here?
Yeah, current models that I'm using, dynamic creative, which is where you upload, multiple images, multiple text, multiple headlines, and it creates all the iterations automatically and shows you the winner. I
Interesting.
always do that. It just saves so much time. I use Matthew J. Holmes's approach. I highly recommend him, and his course is really, really good. It's like $100, I think. Maybe it's more than that. I don't know, but it's worth it because he really is brilliant. But he recommends 3-2-2. So three images, three or two headlines, and then two like text descriptions for the Facebook ad. Targeting wise, I use, again, Matthew J. Holmes does is pretty much the same thing, where I'm using Facebook, like I think it's Advantage Detailed Targeting Plus or something. It's really weird. It's basically letting Facebook, you check the box to let Facebook do most of the targeting for you. However, I've learned that I like, again, your mileage may vary. I like telling it, hey, there's some specific interests that you might start from. So like James Rollins, Dan Brown, Clive Cussler, the authors in my genre, right? Amazon Kindle. If I'm advertising, sending people to Amazon, I want, Amazon Kindle to be one of those interests. But that gives Facebook some information out of the gate to go find other people that can be connected into that audience. That's what hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's super awesome. That's very good. And then someone also asked videos versus images for Facebook ads.
Both can work really well. Both again, so advertising is testing, guys. It's all just testing, and that gets really annoying really fast. I recommend not trying to do both at the same time. Certainly not the same ad or ad set even. But figure out how to do images first, because those don't move. Those are easy. And then you get into video. I did some videos. The ones that were most successful were the ones where I was literally sweating. I'm walking around my neighborhood, taking my afternoon walk, and I'm talking into my phone. That was, obviously took 10 seconds to record. Those performed better than the ones where I'm sitting in a nice camera with my hair all coiffed. Uh, so, you just got to test them and figure out what works, but both can work. It just depends on what you're advertising and how. And again, it's all testing.
Makes sense. Again, yeah, so much of this is gonna be it depends, but here's initial
Yeah, yeah.
thoughts. So yeah, I appreciate the answers. Someone else said that they're creating a YouTube channel with audio stories and sounds like a text overlay so the audience can get to know them, and they're building up a YouTube channel, and they just ask, is this a good strategy?
It depends. No, I'm just kidding. YouTube is huge. It's a really, really big thing. What I love about YouTube is that, in my experience, and I do have some, it's not the Venn diagram of people who are on Amazon buying your books and people on YouTube listening to your books are not the same. Like that, those circles don't really overlap, which means it's a whole new market. I use YouTube. I have a channel I'm building up that is all audiobooks of mine. Very, very simple. It's not, I used to do a moving, like, I would go to like a stock website, a stock video website, and get like moving, videos, drone footage of like a, Amazon rainforest or whatever. I don't even bother with that now. It's just a still image. It has to be a video, unfortunately, because YouTube is video, but it's technically a video. It's just a still image with my audiobook playing it, like 8 hours of audio. And I upload those. I put a bunch of ad spots in between, and then in the description I say, "Hey, yeah, there's ads. Sorry, whatever. If you want to buy it, you can go over here and buy it." No one's ever bought it from the link. People just complain about the ads, but you get paid if you get your channel monetized. 1,000 subscribers, and I think it's 8,000 watch hours over the last year, something like that. Sounds like a lot. It's really not. You get monetized, which means you will get paid money for all those ad spots in your video. So it is a fantastic strategy. I know authors that are doing six figures just in audiobooks on YouTube. Not audiobooks, but just audiobooks on YouTube. So it's a huge, huge, huge platform, revenue generator. And the best part is I can do anything over there, and giving away these audiobooks for free. And my audiobook purchasers, the guys are on Audible, they don't know. So they're not mad. They'll go buy my next book because they have no idea I'm giving them away for free on YouTube. And the truth is they don't really care, because that's not how they want to listen to an audiobook anyway. They're
Right.
two totally different markets.
Right. That makes a ton of sense. Uh, Someone else asks, what are the strategies to increase pre-orders? I'm running Facebook ads, Amazon ads, posting on social. It's on a promo price of 99 cents. I do newsletter stops. What else can I do to increase pre-orders? I'm at 70 total. I'd like 300.
I mean, hey, anything over zero is a great number. It depends on if you've had 7,000 in the past, then 70 doesn't look so good. But I don't do a ton with pre-orders anymore. I used to. I get a little frustrated because Amazon's not putting the rank up on day one. There's just a lot of kind of weird little things. I can get into this, but I don't typically do pre-orders. I will for some things. It just depends. But to get more pre-orders, you do the same things you do to get a book sale. You just have to be willing to spend a little bit more. And the reason is simple. Most people who are interested in your book, they want to go and they want to buy it and they want to start reading it right away, or at least have it on their Kindle ready for them, right? So if you're sending someone to Amazon, say, "Hey, here's my new book, check it out." They want to click it and know that they're going to get it right away. With a pre-order, they're not going to get it right away. So they're going to look at it and go, "Oh man, it's on pre-order. Okay, well, maybe I'll come back to it." And then what do? They forget about it, right? So that jacks up your cost per click, that raises the price of the advertising to that thing. That's a very good example because advertising gives us data like that, like how much it costs to get somebody to go over. But it's the same thing with the newsletter swap, right? You're not paying for that person, but you are having less effect because they go over there and they're like, "I wanted to get a book now, but I'm not getting." So you, instead of doing one newsletter swap, you might have to do two, because you're
Right.
just not getting as many people each time.
Right.
So I
The
hope that is
conversion rate
helpful
is
at all.
just going to
But
be worse with a pre-order.
yeah, it's the same, but just not as good.
Right. Um, that makes a ton of sense. So maybe would make more sense for pre-orders to really just focus on the free methods of promotion, like the social media, the newsletter, where you can just say to your existing audience, "Hey, you already know and love this series. I've got another book coming out on it. Pre-order it here." But when it comes to paid advertising, don't focus on paid advertising when it comes to
Yeah,
pre-orders
I mean, I
because
would
the
say
conversion rate is
paid
just going to be
advertising and
harder.
email both are going to be better than social media, just generally for
Okay, yeah.
sales. I don't treat social media as a platform to try to sell books. Again, it's just being attractive. Not with looks. I'm not talking about that, although I'm very attractive. Being attractive as a brand. So when somebody lands on that, wherever it is, Facebook page, Twitter account, whatever, they know they're in the right place. That's all I'm trying to do with social media. Then over time, I'm hoping that they'll say, "Oh, this guy's really cool. I like him. I want to go check out what he's done." So that's the goal here with social media. So for pre-orders, you can totally use ads to sell pre-orders, but it's just going to cost some number higher than what it would cost to get somebody to buy that book right away. Everything
Right.
else being equal.
Right. Makes
And
a ton of
email is
sense.
always going to be the greatest place to sell, whether it's pre-order or not, because it's the most personal interaction you have with a person on your list, like a reader that you could potentially have. They're on your list. They've given you permission to talk to them in essentially a one-on-one way. And so it's always going to be a more effective avenue. So that's why I always recommend build that email list first. Don't ever stop building it, right? Don't just say, okay, I built 1,000 people on my list. Now let me only do ads. The buckets are email, social media, and then advertising, usually in that order. But once you get to the end, you're just doing all three of those things constantly.
Right. Yep. What are again, quick lightning round. What are some common mistakes authors make with their newsletters?
The biggest mistake I see, and again, I have a ton of experience here. I built and sold author email to Draft to Digital, where I'm now the vice president, and I run author email and a new thing we're building on book covers. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to email, guys. The biggest problem I see authors facing with email is they don't send enough email. That's it. And I know that sounds kind of biased because I'm like, yeah, send more email because you pay me more money. The truth is, it doesn't cost you more money to send more emails with author email. You pay built by based on the size of your list. You can send to them as many times as you want. So sales pitch aside, most people are afraid to email their list because they think it's too often. They think, oh, I'm going to upset people. No, they sign up for your list to hear from you. You need to be sending good emails. You need to be sending good content to them, not just selling them all the time, but they want to hear from you. And a caveat to that, not a caveat, I guess, but a kind of an addendum to that is what I found, the data suggests that most people who don't want to read your email are just going to delete or archive the email. They're not going to unsubscribe. They're not going to scroll down and unsubscribe from your email, right? So don't worry that, oh, I'm making all these people mad just because I've sent them an email 2 times this week. How many of us have gone to Bed Bath and Beyond? That's not still a thing. I'm still on a mailing list that I can't get off of, and they send me stupid stuff every 5 minutes. We're not doing that. That's not who authors are. So don't be afraid to email more often. Readers can handle it. They get emails from all over the place. Be the person that they want to see in their inbox every morning. That doesn't mean send every day all the time, but if you have a launch week, send an email every day. Hey, I'm launching. Hey, I'm about to launch. Hey, I have a question. Hey, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to email too much. That's a big one.
So what's the minimum amount people need to email? Is once every 3 months, is that often enough?
Yeah, it's probably not enough, man. Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
No, I would say if you're emailing once a month, I would urge you to test twice a month. Send bi-weekly every other week. If you're already doing every other week, try doing it weekly. Just double what you're already doing. Now, if you're emailing every day, don't double it. Okay, you're probably emailing enough. But again, I'm not saying that everyone should email every single day. I am saying that if you do email every single day during a launch week, don't be afraid. That's
Right.
probably fine. Also, know that every time you send an email through an email service provider, you're going to get bounces, unsubscribes, complaints. These are the 1-star reviews of the email world. You're gonna get them. The good news is if you're getting bounces, unsubscribes, complaints, you're emailing your readers. You're doing it right. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Now you look at your numbers, right? If you get, 5% bounce rate, and then the next email you send is 15% bounce rate, there's probably some technical error. Or the unsubscribes. If you send, 5 times in a row, and the last time you get a 30% unsubscribe rate, and it's jumped up, 25% or whatever, probably need to look at the content you sent out. But just generally speaking, those numbers shouldn't move around too much. Every time you email, you should get a certain number of unsubscribes. That's a good thing. That means you're doing it right. I don't know any author who's a real author who doesn't have a 1-star review. This is the way
Right.
it is.
Yep.
I
Someone
actually
said
collect
I
them. I read them in the bath. So I have a video of a Facebook ad of me reading my 1-star reviews in a bathtub while I'm drinking wine. I think it's pretty good. But anyone's
I,
interested in that, you don't see.
I
It's just
I love that.
torso up, guys. Don't
Yeah,
get all
yeah, yeah,
excited.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And bubble bath, of course, right? With your ducky.
It's a bubble bath. There is a ducky
Yeah.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I've seen it. Uh, yeah, someone said I have a hard time emailing more than once a month. I hate the thought of bothering people, but
Yeah, no, it's a good question, John.
I've
Yeah.
talked to many authors who have tested, I sent twice a month, I sent once a month. The authors that tested with twice a month instead of once a month saw that their unsubscribe rate actually went down when they started sending more frequently
Sure.
because people stop, like, if you're only sending once
Yeah.
every 3 months, people will just forget who you are and then they'll unsubscribe because they're like, did I sign up for this
Yeah,
mailing
thanks for
list? Like, I
mentioning
don't
that. That
remember. I'm
is
just gonna
absolutely
unsubscribe
a
from
true
it.
phenomenon that, oh, I don't know who you are. I'm going to unsubscribe.
Right. So
Yeah.
just sending more frequently can actually decrease your unsubscribe rate and increase your open rate. At least from the many authors I've talked to who have sent more frequently, find that they actually do better. Now that was sort of more like twice a month versus once a month. But everything's different for everyone. So take everything with a grain of salt. We are 8 minutes over the hour here, so I do want to just give a quick for anyone that needs to bounce. Please do not hesitate to hop off if you need to. Nick, do you have like 2 more minutes? We can ask you just like a couple more quick things.
Yeah, I totally do. I have more than that. We can go if we need to. I did want to say there was a question from someone that asked about my books being on my website and Kindle Unlimited. I need to check because that should be if you buy the ebook, it should go to Kindle Unlimited. I'm not telling everybody to go to my website and buy my books. I mean, you totally could. But yeah, because they're in Kindle Unlimited, so they're not supposed to be available on my website. It's supposed to send you there. So if that's not the case, I'll figure that out. Thank you for bringing it up because it is against Amazon's terms of service. But what I do, the reason for that is, like I said, I'm testing things. Like some books will drop out of Kindle Unlimited and I won't renew because I either want to try going wide or more likely I want to, use Facebook ads to drive traffic to my site and try to do the direct sales thing, which is it's the bane of my existence. But it's definitely something that's powerful for us authors. So that's the reason for that. I did see that question. I wanted to answer that just before anyone's thinking I'm like purposefully trying to game the system or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that is very good to address for sure. Um, because we do try all these things out and then sometimes you just forget what you,
Exactly. Yeah,
need
totally.
to
Yep.
reset something. So, I, just real quick on email still, uh, since we talked about sort of the main mistake is not sending frequently enough. What are, your advice or mistakes that you see? Because you were saying if you get a really high unsubscribe rate from a particular newsletter and you've been sending pretty regularly, then maybe it's a content issue. What are the
Mm-hmm.
mistakes authors make with the contents of their newsletter?
So usually it's not an individual email that's the problem, right? We're not spamming people. We're not, being like, buy my book, with no real content. Usually every individual email is fine, largely. What I'm saying is, it's not like you need to A/B test your subjects and images you use within the email. It's probably fine. I wouldn't overthink it that much. Usually it's a content over the course of a span of time. So you're sending too much only about buying my book. You're saying, hey, buy this book. Then a day later, hey, buy this book. A day later, hey, buy this book. Yeah, people sign up to hear from you, but they also want to hear from you, not just from the faceless marketing corporation that's selling books. So usually the content issue is you're just not balancing enough of the personal stuff. And I don't mean personal like you have to talk about your secret private life, but personal like snap a picture of, a mountain that you live next to or whatever. People, you don't have to give away your private life. You don't have to even have a face on any of this stuff if you don't want to, although it does help, I will say. My readership loves pictures of me and the girls, the family kind of doing stuff. We have to be careful, obviously, putting kids online and all that. And, but email list is a little different because it's a little more private. You know what I'm saying? The point is,
Right. No, I
those
mean, I
people
I do
respond to
that in
those.
my
Yeah.
I do that in my newsletter while I'll, share pictures of me and my family, but I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
post those on Facebook or
Yeah,
elsewhere a
but
lot of
people just
times.
love. I was doing woodworking when we were living in Hawaii. Obviously, that lends itself to a ton of pictures and cool photos. And so I would just, totally unrelated to writing. I'd snap a picture about, a desk I was building and say, yeah, this is what I'm working on. This is the challenge. I got so many responses from people who were saying, oh my gosh, my husband used to do this. This person, I used to was into woodworking myself or whatever. And you'd see a little bump in sales. I didn't
Yeah.
even mention a book in there, but I don't want to say that that's a direct correlation, right? But the point is, that's going to keep people on board. They're going to keep engaged with you. And so usually the content, when I say content is the problem, there's just too much too fast, so that you're selling too much. If you're sending that email every single day, you're not changing it up enough. If you're doing, like I said,
Yep.
I keep saying a launch. Like if you have a launch on Friday and you want to talk about it starting Monday, do it. But Monday should be, hey, I'm so excited about this. This is what I'm going to do. Every day you're going to get an email about this process and the story behind it. I hope that you'll stick around. You can pre-order it now, but you can also wait till Friday and whatever, get a deal. I'll throw in something cool. That's a great marketing email. And then day two, you're like, hey, I told you, here's the first story. Oh my gosh, this book almost never happened. Here's why. Stick around for what I did. But email three could be on Wednesday. This is what I did, and I actually ended up finishing the book. Whatever. John Scalzi did this. He wrote a book during COVID, and this is kind of he wasn't going to happen, so he gave the whole story about it. And I was like, oh, that's really engaging. That's really cool. I'm definitely going to buy the book, because of the story. And then day four on Thursday, you could say, hey, I told you to stick around till the end, and I'll give you, something really cool. And then maybe you can say, hey, if you buy the book tomorrow, shoot me a receipt. I'll personally send you another book of mine, or I'll personally send you, this or that. You gotta be careful with the contest terms of service in your country, all that stuff. But it's not really, it's an email. No one's going to sue you for sending them a free book. The point is, we're talking content, right? So if you're doing something like that, like I said, you are going to get unsubscribes, but that should be a steady, consistent number, 5%, 2%, 10%, whatever it is. It shouldn't be too different. It's when you see it spike for one of these things, you get all these complaints, you get all these, unsubscribes, then you can start looking at that individual email and say, why was that different?
Right.
What did I not do well enough? And I don't know the answer. It's just, depends.
Right,
Um,
right, for sure, for sure.
of
No, but I
course.
think what your recommendation there makes a ton of sense, and that's what I try to do in my newsletter as well. Is like my newsletters, I write software, not books, so a lot of my my newsletters are about like what software updates
Sure.
what
Yeah.
changes I'm making a storage in or whatever. But I always add in that personal piece, like here's me. We were at our
Yeah.
neighbor's
Yeah.
house the other day. They broke out the slip and slide. Here's me going down it for the first time in my life ever
Yeah,
being
and I
on a
love
slip
it.
and
Yeah, I love
slide.
your emails for that because it's you, man. I get to see
Yeah.
you. There's a company that does a to-do app, just your, whatever kind of generic. It's really pretty. I love it, but I don't even use it. But I read their emails because their change log is incredible. Which, if you know anything about software, change logs are not incredible. They're
No.
no fun. They're just like, I mean, you get some updates or whatever, but it's just boring text. They do something so different and so fresh that I'm like, I'm going to stay on this list because I want to hear what their change log is. They just, the way they write it. Highly recommend. It's called Linear App, by the way, linearapp.com, I think. Anyway, it's super cool. They're doing something different. They're shaking it up. But that's exactly what you're talking about is, hey, I write software, but it doesn't have to be about software all the
Right.
time. There's a guy behind it.
Right.
There's a team here.
Right. I love it. I love it. I need to check that out, see what they're doing. Maybe I need to make a super awesome change log.
Dude, be
Um
careful. It'll suck you in. It's good.
uh we've gone way over our time here. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know people have to run things to do. If people want to you have other questions that we didn't get answered during this session, where can people go to find you?
Best place is my name, nickthacker.com. From there, of course, you can find my fiction. But I also, like I mentioned earlier in the call, like I do a lot of nonfiction. So training, I have courses for authors. All that stuff is lives on a website and a brand called bookcareerinayear.com. You can get there from my other website as well. But that's if you're interested in that sort of thing, if you want to hear more about dictation, courses on that, there's a whole blog. Anyway, whatever you want. Chances are, if it's helping the authors, it's going to be on that side. So those are the two big ones. And then whatever social network you're on, try to find me. I may not be as active. Like I mentioned, I keep mentioning Twitter as if I'm there all the time. I'm not. Most of my stuff lives on Facebook, and Instagram a little bit. But anyway, yeah. So those are probably the three biggest places.
Awesome. And anything that you think we didn't cover but you wanted to mention today?
Oh man, I don't think so. There's a lot. No, these are great questions. I know we didn't get through everyone's individual questions, so I just want to be clear. Like anyone watching this or watching it later on, send me an email, man. Like I'm for someone who's built an email platform, I'm notoriously bad at responding to emails, but I do respond to every email. But if you do have a question or something, or maybe send me a Facebook message, I'm a little quicker on those. If you want me to answer a specific question I didn't get to, I'd love to. Like that, I love doing this stuff. So please, by all means, hit me up. I'm not going to be offended. That's what it's there for.
Awesome. And I will also take that as anyone that emails me with a question, I will just forward on to
There
Nick.
you go. Send it on over. Send it on
So,
over.
so anyone that does have a question in regards to story origin or has a question for Nick can also reach out to me. You can find me, storyoriginapp.com. If you just scroll to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see my face, see my name, see my email address. Or if you've joined Story Origin, you'll get emails from me as well. Or if you hit the contact page on Story Origin, you'll get my email address there as well. My inbox is always open, always happy to answer questions. If you say, Evan, not good enough, I need Nick, I'll forward it on to him. So thank you everyone for coming and hang out with us today. Thank you again for Nick for joining us. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one.